They call it the Green Hell. It is a beast of a circuit that does not suffer fools, and of course, we kick things off with it right away. Nobody said the drivers in this community will shy away from a challenge. Let's see who gets the first win of Season 3 as we get ready to watch Round 1 of the Camel GT Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joey Atterbury, and with me in the booth is Ozzy Puaka. Behind the scenes is our director, Joe Peak, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Well, there's a lot to cover with the Nurburgring, so why don't we take a look over at what makes up this legendary circuit.
Welcome to the Nurburgring. Nicknamed the Green Hell by three-time F1 world champion Sir Jackie Stewart, it is often regarded as the greatest test of a driver anywhere on the planet. Just looking at the stats will tell you why. While the combined version holds a swath of choices, they all include 100+ corners and range between 14 and 16 miles, or 24 to 26 kilometers in length. Add to that roughly 1,000 feet in elevation change over the course of the lap, and it's easy to see what's so impressive about it. Simply memorizing the course is over half the battle for drivers, let alone being fast. It goes without saying that the Nordschleife portion is dangerous. Many fast corners lack runoff, there's blind apexes everywhere, and in a couple cases, even modern cars will get airborne. The list of famous turns is pretty lengthy, but some of the more notorious are places such as Fluke Lots, Miss Hit Miss, Bravery Corner, and of course, the ever-iconic Carousel. It's not just the places where you have to move the wheel to get attention too. The Dottinger Hoa stretches for more than 1.5 miles in length. However, that isn't even digging into the Grand Prix portion of the circuit. Much more open and safer in nature, it's no less challenging from a technical standpoint. Passing is still surprisingly hard in most cars, and corners such as the Schumacher S can spit you into the barrier if you don't respect the curbs. Events such as the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring offer drivers of many skill levels the chance to tackle this behemoth, and still draws gigantic grids to this day. Many race fans consider this the mecca of road racing, and any driver who is able to push the limits here often quickly garners their respect.
It is one behemoth of a circuit, and I'm happy that we've got Ozzy here in the booth. We got two classes here today. What are we expecting to see at this racetrack?
Well, Joey, I'm just glad to be here. What can you expect at Nürburgring? Expect the unexpected, I suppose. We might see some different drivers from the usual norms at Camel GT. It is not only the start of a new season, but it is also very much a specialist racetrack. It is the combined Nürburgring circuit today. 15.7 miles, 25.4 kilometers. You got 170 turns to contend with, and it is the kind of a track where if you know the Nürburgring, you know the Ringmeisters, the specialists, they might get an excellent result to start their season today. So what I'm expecting is perhaps a surprise winner, certainly a lot of attrition, and perhaps even some unforgettable overtakes. That's what this track is known for.
I think attrition is definitely going to come into play. Whenever you talk about the Nürburgring, the very narrow, unforgiving racetrack. And let's take a look at last season's championship winner. Going to go through the two different classes here, and it's going to be, I believe, Aitor Sintez Galindo, who was standing on top of that GTP Series points championship this previous season. He with a commanding lead, 51 points over Seamus Power. But look at how close really this battle was. Can't wait to see what GTP offers us this season. I mean, Aaron Humphrey, Fabian Jungbluth, Laust Olsen. I see regular names in here as well as legends like Farron Grau. But that only covers half of the field. Ozzy, talk to us about GTO last season.
Oh yes, the Audis. So Ville Ruola was able to take the championship just 9 points ahead of Jouko Leskela, two Finnish guys. Both of them sort of mentored by Joni Hagner, who was the master of the early days in the GTO category. Uwe Trengride, coming from Lotus 49s, these days does Lotus 79s as well. was able to claim the last spot on the championship podium, and then you got Javier Del Olmo, Arturas Kundelis, Ian Haycox, Doug Loud, Tim Kennedy, Jamie Hamelsmith, and Alex Ott. And I'll tell you what, it's gonna be difficult this season to beat the Finns. I think the most difficult factor for the Finns this season will be the summer. It's right now almost 30 degrees Celsius, and we melt at 25, so that's a problem.
Yeah, it is quite warm out there, and right now the cars are warming up on the racetrack. We already had qualifying go on, so the grid is already set. But Ozzy, you mentioned the temperature on the racetrack. Check it out. Air temp, not so bad, but you're right. Step foot on that black stuff, it gets toasty.
It does. 117 Fahrenheit. That's like 50 degrees Celsius, and that's a bad sauna.
It just makes the cars slippery, struggling for grip is what it's going to do. And when you get to the narrow sections, when you need that grip, you might just have to rely on a little bit of extra caution. And especially when you're trying to pass cars with this narrow circuit, lots of give and take is going to have to come into play. And speaking of today's race, we're going to be doing 6 laps at the Nurburgring. It is round number 1 kicking off this season. As always with the Camel GT series, open setups, no spare car, so the damage you pick up, you're going to have to deal with out on the racetrack. Drive-through penalty at 17x and disqualification at 25. But Ozzy, we see it all the time here at the Nürburgring. I don't think those incident limits are going to come into play one bit. It's just the damage that you can potentially pick up if you have an accident.
Exactly. There are not too many places you can go off track in Nürburgring without having an accident. There's maybe 1 or 2 at the Nordschleife, a couple on the new circuit, the Grand Prix loop, built in to replace the old Südschleife in 1984. A lot of great stories about that one as well. But you see these high curves all around the racetrack, and especially for the Nissans, they're gonna provide a great challenge, because the Nissan relies heavily on its ground effect, and that relies on creating a vacuum between the car and the circuit. So if there's any sort of bump, undulation, sudden crest you go over, anything like that, it's gonna upset the ground effect, and that means losing a lot of grip. And the cars are trimmed already for high speed here, so we're gonna see a lot of accidents potentially in high speed corners as we get ready for the race start.
And especially with the 2 different types of cars making their speed in different areas, and we will bring up our official qualifying results as the practice session winds down here. Mention the 2 different classes here. We start off with GTP in that number 1 car, Adruas Valentius in pole position, Xavier Sanchez in 2nd place, Timothy Reed here in 3rd, Daniel Gomez 4th, Aaron Humphrey with the top 5, Hamilton Ruiz here in 6th place, Fabian Jungbluth in 7th, Aitor Sintes Galindo, our previous champion, in 8th, Brendan Lim in 9th. Then we have some more here, Alexander Van de Stat in 10th, Nicholas Mukonos in 11th, Jorge Exposito in 12th, Richard Holt 13th, Andrew Mitty 14th, Jack David Spickett 15th, Jack Wells 16th, and 2 more in GTP, Jason Clapper and Antonio Alvarez.
And next up in the GDOs, it's gonna be Uwe Trengride on pole position ahead of Topi Korteniemi. They're gonna be starting from the front row. Interesting fact, during the week-long qualifying, Audeus Valentius drove both cars, Nissan and Audi, and he was fastest in both. In the end, ended up taking the Nissan for this race. Starting in 3rd place will be Noel Luneburg ahead of Alex Ott. And Arturas Kundelis gonna be starting 5th with Javier Del Olmo 6th and Andreas Schuster 7th. Doug Cloud, Timothy Vaughan, and Django Wall are gonna be rounding out your top 10 in the Audis, which are gonna be starting further back. Ian Haycox, Tim Kennedy, David Lehman, Jamie Hamelsmith, Francois Schink, JD Rodriguez, Daniel Repetto, Robert Plumley, and Daniel Ivana are gonna round out your 19-driver Audi field.
37 cars is what we're seeing. We did have a split here for this first round at the Nürburgring, and awesome to see some paint schemes that are quite impressive out there, including our pole sitter. It does. I believe that it's at least Van Gogh-esque, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It very much is. I don't think it was. I think I saw a dragon on the right-hand side of the hood, as you Americans call it, which is of course not the engine cover, because the engine is in the middle with the Nissans. And here we see Ian Haycox.
Yeah, speaking of, we got a couple onboard cameras, or at least one. We got Ian Haycox here plugged in, and gonna keep an eye on Ian as he tries to work his way up through that GTO field in his classic bright green Audi. Now, we do have a shortened pace lap at the Nurburgring, so we don't have to go all the way around the racetrack. These cars are actually just coming up here, come through the final couple turns, get out onto the Grand Prix circuit, and it's a good shot of our pole sitter, but we will get green flag racing. You notice the split between the two classes. Nice and organized.
Very much so, and that's a safety feature too. The first corner is pretty much a hairpin here, as you can see soon enough.
And here we go. The field is in the hands for a pole sitter, and we're already standing on the gas. Green flag for the Camel GT series at Nurburgring to kick off the new season. Our pole sitter with a great jump. It's up to Xavier Sanchez, Timothy Reed, and Daniel Gomez as they battle it out for the second place spot. As we jump back, a little bit of contact there for second, but most of the cars make it through. Let's see our GTO start.
Let's see the Audis heading into the first corner. You can see them already 3 wide as they launch into the turn, but everybody's behaving nicely. So far, no men or women or any drivers behaving badly here. A little bit 3 wide further back between 32 and 17, otherwise slight bit of contact, otherwise they are good with the Audis. And look at that jump from Uwe Trengride.
Not surprised to say Trengrade jump up here, and I see also Timothy Reed working his way around Fabian Jungbluth, it looks like, or maybe it's actually Fabian. Yeah, slipping back just a little bit, but our pole sitter in GTP with a clean start, got a huge lead over Xavier Sanchez. A little bit of a battle between Hamilton Ruiz, Aaron Humphrey, Timothy Reed, Fabian Jungbluth, but guys, this is just the easy part of the circuit. We haven't even broken into the tough stuff yet.
No, we haven't. And there is a big difference, as you can see on the laps that will come after this, second, third, fourth lap, etc., on the grip levels between the Grand Prix circuit and the North Loop, which starts now as they are heading to the Sabine Schmitz Bend, the first corner of the Nordschleife. And here you have older tarmac, perhaps, but much more grip. You can feel the grip as you head into this section. These corners just give you confidence, and you have to be right on it, right from the get-go. You can see Valenteius just bouncing around a little bit with the cold tires. His car was wiggling. Sanchez bouncing around. Valenteius is already 3.5 seconds ahead of the field. So that's Sanchez in second place. Ruiz must have seen that and is pouring on the pressure as they come towards the Flugplatz. Jumping a little bit here, and let's stay on this cam as they jump a little bit more as they come over the hill. Right here, you can see just a little bit of airborne, car getting loose, and then right back on track.
These cars make incredible downforce, and it pretty much sucks them down to the ground. The GTOs, you might see them be able to jump up through the air there, and look at this, already maybe a little bit of side-by-side. I believe that was Timothy Reed trying to poke his nose on Aaron Humphrey right back there for what would be the third place position. And you're right, Valenteius, he's already 4.5 seconds up the road. By the time we got onto the other circuit, he was already 3 seconds clear of Xavier Sanchez. So checking out in first place as we look back here at the GTO field.
Yeah, and you can see the Audi is jumping much more. You can see these bricks don't have much downforce. They have a lot of power. They have four-wheel drive, but oh boy, they don't have much downforce. And you can see them just jumping ahead. Here you see the leading duo, Trengride and Korteniemi. It's great to see Topi Korteniemi here at Camel GT as well. Usually known as more of a Lotus 49 and a Lotus 79 driver, a champion from there as well. But Korteniemi now trying to challenge Trengride for that lead with Luneburg, Kundelis and Ott following.
This racetrack is such a challenge. You see a lot of times as we ride on board with Lundberg, it's more of you gotta follow the leader. You don't have an opportunity to necessarily make a move anywhere, so you kind of have to pressure the person in front of you, give them that anxiety, force them into a mistake to potentially open the door and let you have the opportunity to make that move.
No, yeah, it's there's not a lot of overtaking opportunities per se. It's more about forcing the, as you said, forcing the driver ahead of you into a mistake, trying to see where they're weak, trying to see where they're strong, and usually the preferred tactic is, okay, they're gonna be weak in that and that section, that's my strong section, make the overtake happen before it, then pull up a gap so they can't stay in the draft anymore. As they're heading towards the Nissans are already heading towards the straight, that isn't really a straight, coming out of the Bergwerk. Oh, that's very wide indeed for one of these drivers in that trio, and they're side by side in front of them, Joey.
Yeah, this is Jack Wells, Nicholas Mukonos, and Andrew Mitty all trying to settle it out. But something I'm noticing with this GTP field, I mean, it is really condensed here. Second place through, I'm noticing 8th place where Daniel Gomez is one train, and then only about a 1 second gap back there to Jack David Spickett. So even though this racetrack is really known for stretching out battles, it seems like the GTP field is staying very condensed at this time. Now, I know that this is only the first lap. I wonder maybe if Xavier Sanchez is holding some cars up.
And that's Andrew Mitty, and seems like they have gotten into trouble at the carousel section. Let's see what happened here. That's potentially before, slight bit of contact into the carousel, and that happens very easily. Traffic jam on the outside, and sadly a lot of damage as they had to run through that banked section, which is steeper than it looks like on the cameras. Let's hope they can get into the speed quickly here and can perhaps continue their race. A little bit less damage than I saw originally, perhaps, but still a difficult thing. And just gonna mention something about that briefly. The carousel is one of those places where speed difference can be upwards of 1 second between drivers in that one single corner, because some of the drivers can take it much faster. They may have a softer suspension setup, higher ride height, and it requires a lot of commitment and a lot of those old-fashioned bravery, really, to take that corner and confidence to take that corner fast, whereas some of the drivers are not taking any risks there. They don't want to go wide, they don't want to make a mistake, so they might approach it slower. And if you're one of those fast drivers and you're behind somebody who's going to take it slower, that can really catch you out.
I think that once we get further into the race with that mixed class traffic that we will see, just going to be a patience game on the racetrack as we are rounding out lap 1 out onto the big main straightaway, and the draft battle begins. Xavier Sanchez, but this time it's Hamilton. Aaron Humphrey pulling out. He's going to try to go around. Timothy Reed is going to be in the draft. I'm watching Timothy Reed see if he goes from 6th place all the way up to 2nd. Now he's side by side with Aaron Humphrey. He's not lifting out of it. Who's going to be later on the brakes? Looks like it will be Aaron Humphrey up into 2nd place now. We've been watching this battle. Xavier Sanchez led the majority of this lap, finds himself in some dirty air, but our leader, 10 seconds clear in 1 lap.
Just, okay, I'm gonna ask a question. Who is Audrius Valentieus? Where did they come from? And just what is going on here? That's a scorching opening lap. I'm not aware of this driver. I'm sorry, usually I'm good with drivers. Not someone familiar to me. Will be soon making themselves familiar with the circuit. Their qualifying time was absolutely excellent. 3 seconds faster than anyone else. They have just come to play here.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you who he is. It's somebody that I cannot pronounce his name properly. And he's just setting the track on fire out there, and no mistakes is what it takes to win here at the Nurburgring. But we still got a handful of laps, so still a mighty challenge to go. And this is back to the GTO field as they are coming down the end of the straightaway for the first time.
They are, and you can see the Audis, they're much tighter near the top. Korteniemi, Trengride, Luneburg, and Kundelis, the top 4, all in the same pictures, or holding on to that draft train, and Korteniemi having taken the lead. And you can see a little bit of damage on the front end of Trengride's car. That can happen easily, that can just happen from a curb. It can deform the front of the car. Here comes Luneburg, looking to the inside, perhaps protecting his position from Gundelis rather than trying to put a move on Trengride. But so far, Korteniemi taking the lead, and you can see how wide he is able to go as they head towards the second sector of the Grand Prix loop. It's gonna soon loop back and uphill once again, these tight corners. And as I mentioned on the opening lap, drivers are feeling a lot of understeer through this section because there is less grip on the tarmac, especially as it is a scorching hot day in Germany. As said, 50 degrees Celsius track temp, 117 Fahrenheit. That is a lot.
Now, I know that the Audis aren't necessarily aerodynamically dependent like the Nissans are, but looks like Ove has a little bit of front-end damage on his Audi. It looks like, oh, Brendan Lim having a little bit of issues in the GTP field. Maybe has some damage on his car. Take a look at this replay here. See if Brandon Lim got into some trouble. All looks good through here, but this is an area of the racetrack that, yep, sure enough, you bounce over the curbs, and the car definitely didn't like that.
No, and that's why he's limping around the track right now. Apologies for that one. But yeah, you just hit a curb a little bit too much. You cut those curbs. You can cut them a little bit, but if you cut them too much, at the end of that curb, your car can just bottom out on something. The rear end bounces up, and then you're a passenger at that point. The walls are really close to you. That arm code just around a meter from circuit, like 3 feet from the edge of the circuit. Good luck, have fun with that one.
I mean, and it just lines this racetrack everywhere you look. So if you make a wrong step, you are going to pay for it no matter where you are on this circuit. And so, yeah, there might be some tire barriers in areas, but I mean, you look at how tall some of the curbs are here at the Nurburgring, and that can destroy the front end of a car if you hit it the wrong way. And nothing has really changed up front in terms of our lead in GTP. Arduous continues to gap it out up over 10.5 seconds, but right now it's Timothy Reed leading this second pack. He's got Aaron Humphrey in chase, Xavier Sanchez closely in follow, and then a little bit of a gap back to Hamilton Ruiz. But I tell you what, it's all still staying pretty condensed that when you get to these straightaway sections, the draft, the toe effect is pretty large, and it comes right back into play.
And I found some information on our GDP leader.
Do tell.
I've been doing some research. So, Audrias Valentijus, a Lithuanian driver. Yes, I was kind of bouncing between Latvia or Lithuania, but turns out Lithuania used to be a name mentioned on iRacing News back in 2013 when he was crunching the Radical Challenge, fighting for that one against some Iberian drivers. So a long-time sim racer recently having made a comeback.
Oh, okay. Well, and I mean, that would also explain, you look at his iRating, 8,000 plus iRating. He carries that #1 number board. So, yeah, he's got plenty of skill on the racetrack. And checking back in, Topi Korteniemi continues to lead this hungry GTO pack, but it looks like 4 cars all the way back to Arturas Kundelis here, fighting for this podium.
Yeah, so Kundelis is, you can see the view from their onboard as they come to what is the slowest section of the track, gonna be accelerating right, then across the bridge. And this is really going across a village here. So these are people who live here every day. You can see some cafes, restaurants to your right. And surprisingly cheap houses, by the way. I was looking at them the other day, wondering if I should move here. Up from Exmühle and then to the scene where Niki Lauda had his horrible accident in 1976 that ended Formula 1 here. The Lauda links, the Lauda left, then to the Bergwerk corner, and after that it's gonna be a long, flat-out drive, and these Audis are gonna get closer and closer. You can see a bit of a gap forming between Trengride and Luneburg. Well, Luneburg now has a chance to catch back up to Trengride, and you can't really see it in pictures, but this is uphill almost all the way towards Mutkurva at the Bravery Bend before they go to Carousel.
I'm a little bummed out because Joe Peak is working the controls as our producer tonight, but he was just here at the Nurburgring, got even a ride around the racetrack, so it would have been awesome to hear his perspective on it all. I'm sure he's salivating at the mouth on everything that I'm calling wrong here on this race, but he's just going to have to suck it up back there and listen to us, Ozzy, because I like hearing your stories about this racetrack, and you've even been here, so not only does Joe have experience here, but Ozzy, you've been here as well.
Yeah, that's a story for a podcast, really, but I was here in 2008, a couple of days after my sister's wedding. It took place in Lübeck, Germany, because my sister is German, born in Germany. So, as we have a side-by-side battle, Jack David's Piquet, and that would be Auto Sintes Galindo alongside him. Let's return to that story later on, as Piquet is still a little bit ahead, but they're still side-by-side here, Joey, and a little bit of contact!
Oh, and Auto Sintes Galindo has heavy damage, and it looks like Jack David Piquet also picked up some damage, and you got to remember, Auto is our previous series champion here. Ozzy, let's take a look at this replay. I didn't catch this one.
Yeah, so Sintes Galindo and Piquet really side by side. You can see Piquet there on your right. Neither of them willing to give an inch as they come towards the Tiergarten section of the track, the very last corners, and then just Piquet going a little bit wide, maybe bumped a little bit wide over the curbs, having no choice but to go straight line. They make slight bit of contact. That is at over 250 kilometers an hour. That is well past 150 miles an hour. And these are really wide race cars, low-slung race cars. Slight bit of contact, it's gonna upset them, and onto the wall they go. And it was really lucky for Piquet that it was only, I say only in quotation marks there, Sintes Galindo going off there, because Piquet was really, once he went over the curbs, that was a wild ride he was potentially headed for, and I wouldn't be surprised if that car has sustained some underbody damage as a result.
It was quite a dramatic crash, and I would say that you're being generous on the 250k, 150 miles an hour, because these GTP as well as the GTO cars can reach speeds in upwards of 190 plus on that straightaway. So depending on where they were, yeah, just a crazy dramatic crash. And let's follow this GTO field, because we're heading out onto that same straightaway. And yeah, that is front end damage on the number 8 second place car, Ove Trengrade. Doesn't seem to be affecting him too much into the draft, but I'm curious about his top speed, if he's got enough to overtake.
Looking to the outside, and I'm gonna say that's a yes. Topi moving right into his draft as a result of that, and you can see Luneburg there looking to overtake Topi, potentially looking to take second place, perhaps even the lead, and Topi being very smart here, just lifting off a little bit, realizing the position is gone. No point going side by side through there. You saw what happened to the Nissans. Well, these guys didn't see it, but often you see what happens to the Nissans. One of the most popular crashing spots in racing at the Nurburgring is that last straight when it just gets narrower and narrower. You have these fast flat out S's, you have to start braking at some point, not too much room, and here comes Luneburg for the lead.
Yeah, down to the inside and potentially 3 wide. This is a tricky little section here. It's kind of seesaw back and forth, and now they come out 2 by 2 trying to settle it out, but that all-wheel drive really launches the Audi out of the corner, and you're right, Lundberg to the lead, Trengrade in second place. And something that I noticed about Lundberg's car in comparison to the other 3, Ozzy, he's the only one that doesn't have front-end damage.
Yeah, maybe higher ride height, maybe just able to avoid those curbs a little bit better, who knows. And a lot of it can be just visual damage, in a way that you hit that front end onto a curb a little bit bad. It can affect and will affect your downforce. This is a simulation after all. But at the same time, it might be something of a calculated risk. I remember when I was doing Lotus 79s actively, the classic Lotus Grand Prix series here. And I was I ran about 5 to 10 millimeters lower ride height than almost anybody else. I was willing to sacrifice the top speed, and I was willing to take the damage, because I knew that with my driving style, I'm not gonna be able to just lock out consistently over the course of a 7-lap race there and not get damaged. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna damage the car on the opening lap, and then it's gonna have the same underbody damage anyway, and it's gonna be faster because it's lower down, even if it has that bit of damage. So it just might be something that these drivers realize that, okay, I'm not gonna be able to avoid the damage if I'm gonna get everything out of this setup, out of this car, and they made a conscious decision to essentially do it like they did in the 80s, where they did it with the turbos. The car is sort of on a timer. You're hurting the car to make it go faster.
I want to draw some attention here. This is riding on board with Ian Haycox, still running where he qualified. He's had a lot of pressure in the form of Robert Plumley as well as David Lehman, and Robert Plumley is no slouch. He was last season's F2 champion in terms of the Lotus 49 series. And something interesting to note here, you only see one footwork in these pedals here. Ian Haycox, right, he had an accident not too long ago, lost a limb there, and he has hand controls in terms of his accelerator, but doing everything with the brake and the clutch there with his left foot, and it's extremely impressive. It has not slowed him down one bit.
No, it hasn't. That is something, if you have motorcycle experience, you're going to be more used to hand controls. But I've tried out hand controls for someone who is fortunate enough to have his 4 limbs remaining. And I've tried hand controls, and it can be very difficult if you wouldn't have the motorcycle experience or motocross experience or something like that to get used to the fact that you're controlling the throttle with your hand. Even more so, not having that other foot like doing the blipping and everything you need to do on downshift, because mind you, this is a manual car. So you are blipping on the downshifts and stuff like that. For some of these drivers, it comes as second nature, and what he's doing is very impressive here, especially at this pace. And it's just a lesson to be learned that even if you have a terrible accident, terribly unfortunate accident, something like that, if you happen to lose a limb, it's not impossible to continue racing, whether it is in real-life motorsport or indeed in sim racing.
Yeah, and you definitely can't look at it as a negative, but we see in real-life racing, there's a lot of racers that we look up to that have handicaps. Alex Wickens comes to mind immediately in IMSA. You have Zanardi out there, and it's interesting that I never really draw the parallels, but Ian Haycox is doing this here in the simulator. I am not aware of any other drivers that have severe handicaps such as that are really out there doing broadcast races. And you start to draw the parallels with some of these professionals you see on TV, and there's nothing different that Ian Haycox is doing than what you see in the real world as well.
Yeah, and Sanchez now trying to take the 3rd place from Humphrey now. Let's see if that works out. No, it doesn't. Sanchez not quite able to pull it off. Humphrey, as a result of that, able to retain that podium position. Ruiz there in that tow as well. And you see Jungblut, Fabian Jungblut, one of the veterans of this series in number 16. He's not too far away either, just 1.9 seconds back from, 2 seconds back from these guys. So if they start battling, which it looks they do, Jungblut might soon be joining the podium battle here, which would be a great result for him as well. Going back on the handicap drivers, I seem to remember a couple, can't recall their names, apologies right now, just can't recall their names right now. I know that in Finland and internationally there is a team called Deaf Sim Racing, which have drivers that are born deaf, and it's not quite the same thing, but they are driving with ear implants on. And I know one of the Finnish drivers, actually a very successful Finnish driver by the name of Antti Terho, who you've seen probably in some of the broadcasts here as well. And he was born deaf and uses an ear implant. But he mentions that even if the implant turns off or the audio goes off, he can race just fine without sound. And that to me is unbelievable.
Well, you learn something new every day, and I love technology and what it can allow people to do. And this is a battle on the racetrack looking back through, I believe this is called the 007 camera, from Aaron Humphrey to Xavier Sanchez. And Sanchez has really been starting to apply the pressure. This battle, it's Humphrey, Sanchez, Ruiz, these 3 GTP cars. And Sanchez was actually the cork in the train earlier. He was holding up the cars, but ever since then, Timothy Reed has escaped off the road into 2nd place, and it's Aaron Humphrey that's led the charge here for this second pack, call it. And Xavier Sanchez stuck with it. Hamilton Ruiz stuck with it as well. And at this point, it's just kind of a draft battle. And there's that fourth car that you were just mentioning, Ozzy. Fabian Youngbluth, he's starting to actually close up this gap. He was about 1.82 seconds at the start of this lap. Now he's right at that 1 second barrier. So what was 3 cars going to turn into 4.
Yeah, and gonna get draft soon. Not quite yet. This is not quite yet the draft range, but he will start to get some soon. And I love that Minolta Toyota livery right from the 80s, late 80s. That's a beautiful, beautiful car. And I hope to see Youngblood taking that beautiful car potentially to podium today, even if we are impartial, of course, here in the commentary booth. But that's a lovely livery. Gotta see the classics, of course, in these historic series, appreciated as they should be. Coming down the hill towards Fuchsröhre and the compression now. Adenauer Forest is going to be the next corner that's going to come up, and you can see just how Sanchez is all over the back of Humphrey. And meanwhile, the Audis lead battle here, 3 wide.
3 wide for the lead in our GTO field. Uwe Trengren almost has contact with Topi Korteniemi, just inches separating the 2 Audis, but now they're settled out. Single file. Take a deep breath for now, because we still got 3 more laps to go, only halfway for these GTO cars.
Oh yeah, and you can see Kundelis there in that lime green car on the back of that train, holding on to his dear life. I've noticed he's been 5-6 tenths away from this queue, catching up on the straight lines, losing a bit in the corners. He's trying his best to just hold on to the back for now, stay in this lead battle, and his chances are gonna come on those last 2 laps, especially the last lap when they are gonna start fiercer parts battling. But right now it looks to me that Korteniemi and Trengreid are just an inch stronger than Luneburg and Kundelis, just a little bit faster. It's not much of a difference. These 2 are able to stay in the draft just fine, but you can see them just pulling away in these highly technical corners. But still Korteniemi, even when he's in the lead, he's not quite confident enough to hold on to his racing line. He's gonna hold off Uwe just a little bit in these corners, just sticking to the middle of the track until he takes it to the racing line. And that's probably also because he knows Uwe very well, and Uwe is the kind of driver that can absolutely send it into the inside of a corner if he sees an opportunity, even if he's a little bit far away. He's not a dangerous driver, but he's a very brave driver, and there are very few in the historic scene that have better car control than Uwe Trengreid.
He is a fantastic sim racer and always at the front of the pack. Now, I did mention that we might see some inter-class mixing of the racing. Curious to see. It doesn't look like on pace we're going to get it, but if we have some of the GTO cars kind of struggle a little bit further back. Oh, Xavier Sanchez actually just had a big-time wiggle coming out of one of the corners. I believe it was one of the carousel corners, and lucky for him, he didn't lose any positions, but look at how close now Hamilton as well as Fabian has drawn up.
You're going on board of him here, coming towards Carousel, and you can see Sanchez here just losing a bit of time, trying it hard. I talked about the bravery heading into the Carousel corner. Well, just cutting the left front tire a little bit too far to the groove on the inside. You want to be right on it's a very wide car, and that's a very treacherous balance to try and acquire. But I think he was trying to go a little bit faster, trying to cut it just that little bit more. And when it loses the grip, when the car gets too upset on the banking, that can so easily happen. Great job by Xavier to really just control that situation, not take it into a spin, and great job by the drivers behind as well to avoid him, Ruiz and Youngblood. I don't think they were quite close enough to be severely affected, but it can easily lead into a pileup, as we saw on lap number 1, when you make a mistake on a place of the track where there is only one racing line.
Well, we are going to get some real-world information from Joe Peak. He's saying there's way too much grass around this racetrack. There's not enough dirt lining the outside here, so agree or disagree with Joe Peak. Too green here at the Green Hell. And that's Timothy Reed, that's problems. He was our second place GTP runner.
Wow, and I'm gonna go on a limb and say that's mini carousel. Oh, that's before, that's Schalvenswans actually. That's the Schalvenswans corner, so the Swallow's tail, potentially. Did he have trouble before? They're coming too far towards the Stefan Bell of SS. Is he gonna cut the curb too much here? A little bit, but that's not really gonna cause it. And then you have a fast right-hander and like a treacherously slow left-hander, just braking in a little bit too wide, opening the throttle a little bit too early, wiggling a little bit, and then towards the mini carousel they come and losing the grip on the mini carousel. Yep. So it started on potentially Bell of SS. Hit that curb a little bit. That can upset the balance of the car. That's gonna cause you some damage as well to the underbody. And then Schalvenswans, you saw him wiggling a little bit loose and maybe a little bit overcooking the tires or something heading into mini carousel can happen easily. And then when you have that banking, you have that elevation change on the circuit, it's gonna put the car off balance as is. You're gonna need all the grip you can, and then you have a spin. But thankfully for Reed, the spin, while it did cost him a lot of time, it was lazy enough to not total his car. As a result of that, he is now in 7th place and some 10 seconds away from where he was track position-wise. 2 laps left, 8 seconds ahead, back to that 2nd place, 6 seconds to podium. Can he do it?
One unfortunate thing for Timothy Reed, though, is that he did pick up damage on the front right of his car, so he's following Daniel Gomez right now, probably just kind of assessing exactly where it's damaged, where he's losing speed. I think he had an opportunity to go by, but I tell you what, he was the only one that was threatening our leader in terms of pace, and now that he's out of the picture, it shows really the gap that our leader's built up to Aaron Humphrey. 25 seconds to 2nd place is something that hasn't separated this GTO battle. It's still led by Topi Kortuniemi, Ove Traingrade in 2nd place, Noel Lundberg there in 3rd, and Arturas Kundelis in 4th. Coming up out of the carousel where we saw some GTP cars have troubles, and there, Uwe Traingrade actually got wide coming up out of the carousel, lost a little bit of time.
Yeah, and that's a treacherous section because that's an uphill run here all the way to the Hedvigshöhe, which is the highest point of this racetrack. Gonna be downhill from here. Is it gonna be downhill for Uwe Traingrade from here as well? I don't know. The good thing is he's still some 0.6 of a second away from Lundberg, but crucially, Lundberg 1.1 back from Topi, because that was Uwe between them, sort of holding on to Topi's draft, which dragged along Noel, and Arturas Kundelis as well. Now Topi got a free half a second, and he has 9/10 thereabouts that he has to get away from these guys to extend that gap with in order to get away from the draft onto that long back straight. I don't see it happening just yet, but I don't think Topi is gonna be overtaking on the Döttinger Höhe this lap either. That's a little bit too far away for Noel Lundberg now. Uwe holding on to Noel's draft, as we can see, and Kundelis now perhaps catching a bit of a break, having a car now between himself and Lundberg a little bit closer, and you can just see how they get airborne over the 2nd Flandsgarten hump.
A car that we haven't mentioned much yet, and there continues to be more damage on the front end of these Audis, and it can't be helping them. I look at the fenders on Traingrade's car, and I mean, they are all tore up, and he's got more problems going through the mini carousel, so I gotta wonder, is it hurting Ove not only in a straight line, but does he have enough suspension damage? Does he have steering damage on his car now?
Well, we can see that if we run on board of him. It's a straight line now, so Joe, please, can we go on board? There we go. And yep, he is, you can just see the steering wheel. He's having to do these little corrections. The car wants to go to the right. So the car wants to go a little bit to the right, and that's explaining why he has all these difficulties in the corners. And also because he has to do these corrections even on a straight line. That's gonna heat his tires more, that's gonna impact his tire wear. And that car, of course, is even factory new, it's a bit of a creak in terms of aerodynamics. But now it's a crumbled creak, and that's going to be even worse for the airflow as well. So it's a really double whammy for Uwe Traingrade. and as a result of that, I'm gonna say Gundelis is gonna have to pass him real soon. We know what a beast Uwe is car control-wise, but he doesn't have the pace to match those two leaders, not with the car in that condition. If he proves me wrong on these last 2 laps, I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna buy the man a drink.
Well, the only thing that Arturus has got is that he has a lot of front-end damage himself. So it's going to be a little tough for Arturus to get up there and make that move on Ove, considering they are kind of even on that damage level. And something that's impressive, our leader in GTP almost up to 30 seconds ahead of everybody now. Arturus is just a machine at the Nurburgring, clicking off sector times, fast lap times. He's the only car that's even touched the 7-minute, 10-second lap time. I'm looking at the next fastest. You got to go back to Timothy Reed, who at one point did have similar pace, but fast lap compared to fast lap, Arturus out front a full 2 seconds faster than Timothy Reed's fast lap. So just on cruise control. And hey, check this out. We're getting a pass between GTP and GTO.
Yay.
Well, we saw it here at the Nürburgring. Thank you to Joe Peak for covering that pass there. So our leader goes up through the mini carousel, completing the last sector here of lap number 5. He's going to be coming to the white flag. Now, I say coming to the white flag, he's still got to go down this huge long straightaway through a few more corners, and then he gets to see Barney holding that white flag.
Yep, Barney's certainly getting a lot of frequent flyer miles here on iRacing, and I think the pace has been unbelievable. Audrius went to Nurburgring and said, "Will you be my Valentinius?" Just absolutely falling in love with this track, it seems.
Well, I hope Joe is slapping his knee back there, because you are coming up with all sorts of good ones out here. But through the final few corners to finish lap number 5, the number 1 car now sees that white flag from Barney. 1 lap to go here at the Camel GT Series opener.
Ooh.
Arduous, without any mistake, should claim a win with that checkered flag. But here we go. Xavier Sanchez chasing down Aaron Humphrey. He's officially caught him. Aaron Humphrey going to defend him off. And you got to think, Aaron Humphrey, he's one of the championship contenders that's always there. So he wants to keep whatever points he can.
Absolutely, but that goes for all of these drivers. Season opener, you want to open a new season well, decide if you want to race in this summer heat. Look at Sanchez going to the inside, just going to that 1 car with gap, and just Humphrey has to give it to him. Sanchez now to the inside and taking the position away, and all his fans will be cheering. Remember, Sanchez, of course, a famous streamer on iRacing service going by the name of Heikki360 ES. Stands for Espanol, which is Spanish or Spain, and certainly one of the most popular, perhaps the most popular Spanish language streamer here on iRacing, getting his name from Heikki Kovalainen, which is an interesting choice. But yeah,
Well,
do you know what Heikki's been up to after Formula 1, by the way? It's an he went and won the Japanese GD 500 or the Super GD Championship, and then went on and won the Japanese Rally Championship before starting rallying in Finland.
I'm jealous of a career like that. And looks like Jorge Lopez Exposito having a couple problems here through the GP section of the racetrack. I also see maybe a little bit of front-end damage that he's carrying along on that number 7 machine. But check this one out. It hasn't gone anywhere the entire race. Topi Kortuniemi now being chased by Noel Lumberg out here. Now, these GTO cars still have a full lap and a half remaining.
Yeah, so these drivers certainly not on their final lap, despite what it says on the top left corner of your screen. Now, whatever device you are using, Luneburg getting a chance to catch up to Topi. He was a little bit slower in the Bergwerk corner, but that's acceptable. That's one of those corners where you really have to take a late apex and if you don't quite trust the tires enough at this point of the race, you can just take it a little bit easily, lose a couple of tenths, it's fine. This is really a very brave driver's overtaking spot as it is. I know one of our commentators calls this the bravery bend, the mutkurve. Some drivers call it that as well. One of those corners which is on the limits of being flat out or not, and one of the more underrated corners on this circuit as well. But I would expect Lüneburg to just follow Topi through this last sector as we come from carousel to carousel, where it's gonna be a lot of blind corners. And this is really the part of the racetrack where the ringmeisters hope to make all the difference. Everything on Nurburgring up to this point, up to the first carousel, that's just playing around. Once you get to these crests, over these brows, hitting these apexes, that's when real skill and knowing the track by heart starts to truly matter. That you know what's gonna be in there, that you know there's a curb you can take, a curb you cannot take. Some corners you can extend the track a little bit. We should actually, if we can just jump on board Lüneburg for a bit, perhaps explaining this last sector a little bit better for our viewers as well. Here you go, the YouTube corner, and then going right, you can take it very wide there. You can see a bit of a curb extension as well. Downhill from here, brake early, and brake early for this one as well. Brünchen here, and once again, flat curb, take the extension, over crest to the right, flat curb, take the extension here. You can see Topi doing it, winning a little bit of time, going half a car with wider. Ice curve here, you can use the curb, Topi's using it, Lüneburg's using it as well. And then you come towards the end part, Pflanzgarten 2, Stefan Bellof SS. Before, that's Pflanzgarten 1, and then over the crest to what we finished up the Backman corner to the left, and then Pflanzgarten 2, and then the Bellof SS. And you have to really watch out for the curbs in the Bellof SS. They can really, really wreck your car. So just ride them gently. A little bit too rough of a rider for Noel Lüneburg, ending up going a little bit wide, losing a bit of time there. As a result, 8 tenths back of Topi Korteniemi now. It's still a gap which he can catch up to on the Dottinger-Höhe straight, but it's not the kind of gap that you want to create if you want to make that overtake happen. Sorry, I went off a bit there.
It's pretty typical of you. You know, I can get some things accomplished over here, but look at that white car, that number 8 Ove Trengrade. He's actually closed into Lüneburg, so don't count Ove out now. He's got damage, but all of these cars really are kind of picking up the front end damage from bouncing over the curbs, being so aggressive here at the Nürburgring. I'm looking at the top speeds. Trengrade up 173 miles an hour, Lüneburg 171, Korteniemi actually 166. So the big refrigerator pushing the air up front definitely at a disadvantage compared to Lüneburg and Trengrade. And there we see that gap start to close up, but he had enough of a lead going out onto the straightaway that they weren't able to close it up and get by. So Topi Korteniemi continues to lead. That black number 2 car looks for that white flag one more time by for the GTO cars as our leader up here, Ardruas, continues to just click it off. And, you know, I'm seeing more passes. I see him pass a few GTO cars, so not just one pass that we saw on screen. Looks like we're getting 2 and even 3 passes as we come up to the mini carousel for the final time. Ozzy, any final thoughts on what this GTP leader has just put down here?
A lot. My initial thought actually was that I might owe Uwe that drink if he continues to pull up that climb. But yeah, Arturas, just amazing driving there. Amazing driving there, heading to the Dottinger-Höhe straight now. You can see how he overtook those GTO cars, going down to the inside at mini carousel, even at the last lap, even with a 30-second lead. Unbelievably crunching performance. His qualifying time pretty close to a world record on this combination. I believe it may have been the, in fact, world record in this combination, but his race pace was even more impressive than his qualifying, just squashing everybody out there. A dominant performance, and one we can only watch in awe.
And ever since he got that green flag, got a huge jump on the field, didn't even look back. Our winner, the number 1 car, Druis Valentwis, and I'm sorry for butchering your name here, but look at this. I believe this is Timothy Reed. He's going to go by Aaron Humphrey here. Timothy Reed has clawed back all that time that he lost, falling back to 7th position side by side. Aaron Humphrey is going to try to fend it off late on the brakes. Can Timothy do anything about it? It doesn't look like it. It's all going to come down to the power coming out of the final corner. Xavier Sanchez already crosses the line in second. Aaron Humphrey rounds out your podium there with Timothy Reed, a comeback charge. Fabian Jungbluth with a top 5.
Yeah, what a comeback for Reed. Not quite able to get on the podium, but he got so close in the end. He must have been absolutely hauling, catching those guys up on the last couple of laps. Sadly, we had so many battles to follow, not quite able to follow Timo D's progress. However, this is something we get to enjoy for the entire lap now. Just exiting Flugplatz here, coming towards the Schwedenkreuz, the Swedish cross, and then the Arenberg corner. One of the more famous going off spots in Nurburgring. If the rain happens to come this downhill, it usually collects on this Schwedenkreuz left-hander, and then at the bottom of the hill here you usually see a slight pond of a lake. But look at this, Korteniemi, Luneburg, Trengride, Gundelis has now lost 6 seconds, so it's between these 3 for the season opening win, and more importantly, who can write their names down the history books in golden letters as a winner at the Nurburgring. That matters.
I like the difference in terms of the lap time between GTP and GTO, because look at this, we get to cover the whole last lap of this fantastic GTO fight. Korteniemi in the black number 2, Lundberg here right in front of us in the black and red number 15. We ride on board with the white number 8 of Uwe Trengrade, going through a tricky section of this racetrack. Now, I guess the whole dang thing is tricky, but there's areas here that the curbs really stand out, and this is one of those sections that if you dare touch those curbs, it can throw you into a guardrail.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of those good examples. A flat-out corner in the Lotus 79 if you take it just right. And then you come to the miss. Sorry, I always get that wrong. So miss. And it has a German name. And I'm sorry, I'm not about to pronounce it right now, but it's something like the triple right. So, and in German, that, of course, because it's German language, it comes down to about 45 letters and 35 of them which are consonants, and rest I can't pronounce. So yeah, one of those corners which which really describes how you're supposed to take that corner. I've always taken it more as a hit hitting the both of the last 2 apexes, but that depends also on the car of choice. As Korteniemi now starting to extend that gap once again here in this sector, and now Luneburg has to be careful of Trengrade. Because if Trengrade decides that Luneburg's pace is not enough to catch up to Topi or stay in the draft of Topi in this sector, then he might be going for an overtake coming towards the Bravery Bend. I know that his car is pulling to the right, he might still go for it. Let's see.
I agree with you, because if Lundberg loses too much time here, Trengrade loses all possibility of the win. But going up the uphill, looks like both of them were able to use the power of the slipstream. That big old refrigerator up there punching a hole in the air the size of a semi-truck, just sucks up everything back behind it, including your competitors in the form of Lundberg and Trengrade right now. Through the carousel section, let's see if anybody has any missteps. Actually, Korteniemi flirted with that top ledge going through the carousel, but all is safe and well. Now through the backside of the racetrack, this is where the things really pick up in terms of the pace. Now, this racetrack is always high speed, but through this back section, it just starts to really get into a rhythm.
Absolutely does. And once again, you can see just how many times we covered this section at length, but you can just see how blind everything is. Even here, you can't see anything past the corner, you don't see the exit, you just have to trust it and know it's there. It hasn't moved anywhere. It hasn't done so for the most part of last 50 years, when they last time did major renovations to this circuit after 1967 or so. was a little bit different back in the days of Grand Prix Legends than it is now. But yeah, just look at the gap that Topi is able to pull. It's not much, but it's the gap that makes a difference. It's a huge difference between half a second and 1 full second as they head to that last straight. And here, going over the Flans Garden, the jump cam, I love it how they get airborne over there. Now, I wonder what will happen on the last straight. Lüneburg is gonna be the prime catalyst for this battle. He's gonna get draft from Topi. He's gonna be the one favorite for the win. But can Topi somehow come back? Can he maybe try and cut that draft? Who knows? All I know is that if I would be Trengrade right now, I wouldn't even try to go 3 wide. I would wait for them to maybe come together, come into Tiergarten, because there is always that risk. But you have to calculate it and get it right.
I think that 3 wide anywhere in the Nurburgring, other than the straightaway, is probably a near-death experience. But just like last lap, look at this. Topi Korteniemi really gapping it out over Noel Lundberg in second place. I think that he's got enough of a gap, plus doing the snake, the weave down the straightaway to break whatever slipstream there is. It's going to be up to Trengrade here to see if he can make a move on Lundberg, as I just don't think they're close enough to Korteniemi. And here goes Trengrade out to driver's right. He's going to pull up alongside Lundberg, and yes, it's a drag race for second place. Who's going to be later on the brakes? Lundberg edging ahead ever so slightly. Trengrade driver's right, and sure enough, Korteniemi out front. Just a couple more corners left. Put the power down from that Audi all-wheel drive. He sees the checkered flag. Topi Korteniemi claims the first win at the Nürburgring. Noel Lundberg, second place. Trengrade finishes your podium.
Wow, so it ended up in a fashion that Topi loved. He was able to gap those cars just a little bit, the difference between half a second and 1 full second. Then was snaking, and then Uwe went alongside Lüneburg. Of course, he wanted that second place, can't blame the man, but that really put the nail in the coffin to Topi Korteniemi's victory in this race as well, because they weren't able to follow Topi's draft all the way through, especially once the uphill gets a little bit steeper and you really need that draft as the speed gets higher. It gets more and more effective the further you go down the straight. If Uwe had bump drafted, if he was able to help Lüneburg, Noel maybe try catch up to Topi, who knows what would have happened. But then if cows had wheels, they would be milk trucks. So that's just useless to speculate right now. For Topi, a well-deserved victory and a great race at the top in the Audi field.
What we're going to do is take a quick break, be right back with the official results and any post-race interviews. Complete domination from the number 1 car. He collects pole position and our first win of the season. Valenteus in that GTP. Look at this, 32.6 seconds over Xavier Sanchez, who in no doubt is a slouch. I mean, he is one of the fastest sim racers out there. Just impressive from Valenteus. Then we got Aaron Humphrey rounding out the podium. Timothy Reed with a little bit of a comeback charge after falling down the order. Fabian Jungbluth with a top 5. Hamilton Ruiz finishes 6th. Daniel Gomez 7th. Nicholas Mucanos there in 8th. Jorge Exposito 9th. Richard Holt in 10th place. Antonio Alvarez 11th. And Jason Clapper, your last GTP car on the lead lap.
And then we get to the GTOs, the Audis. Topi Korteniemi taking the win, opening this season in a fashion Topi usually does, with a big fat W. Noel Luneburg taking the 2nd place, and Uwe Trengrad rounding out the podium. Arturas Kundelis was able to finish 4th, just half a second in the end ahead of Javier Del Olmo, a battle that really raged on over the course of that last lap. Javier not quite able to catch Arturas up, however. Timothy Vaughan in 6th place, then it's Django Wall, Ian Haycox, Robert Plumley, and David B. Lehman in the top 10. We have some more Audis as well. Francois Schink finishing 11th, and then Alex Ott and Doug Cloud actually still to finish, probably having some difficulties in the last lap. And then you get your list of retirements. Daniel or lapped cars, Daniel Repetto, Tim Kennedy, and Daniel Ivana. Andreas Schuster ranked 17th, JD Rodriguez and Jamie Hamill-Smith finding the walls here at the place that has quite a few of them.
Just an impressive turnout, 2 splits here for the Camel GT Series opening round. And I want to thank today the team here. It looks like, actually, we've got one interview. Topi Korteniemi slipping in here. Yes, I'm sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. Topi, it looks like you are in here in the commentary booth, and congratulations on the win here at the Nurburgring.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
Well, talk to me about the race you had, because it seemed like you had company in the form of your rearview mirror between Lundberg, also Trengrade, and even Kundelis was back there for the majority of it.
Yeah, I was trusting that Uwe had more pace than I, and I was actually planning somewhere around mid-race to maybe be 2nd or 3rd by the time of the last lap for the Döttinger Höhe. And I was planning to let Noel pass me on the 5th lap, but I managed to build a gap, and he didn't pass me, so I just pushed like crazy after the carousel on the last lap to build the gap. It paid off.
It did pay off. Well, I saw that the previous lap, they weren't able to slipstream up close enough. And were you aware of any of the damage that was being picked up on the front end of the Audis? It seemed like your car did have slight front end damage, but the cars such as Trengrade, it picked up huge fender and bumper damage. Was it just maybe from hitting the curbs too much?
It could be that, or it's the Flanskaden, the little bump in the mountain section. I don't know if I had damage. We did rub a little paint in T2 on the first lap, but I didn't know I had damage, to be honest.
Well, in talking about this season, always great to have you racing here in Camel. Are we going to see you around more this season?
Maybe not every race, but we'll say maybe at the end of the August or August maybe. We'll see.
Well, I love seeing you race out here. You're always lighting the racetrack on fire with speed. So, Topi, I love seeing you and having you here in the Camel GT Series. Before I let you go, anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Mick Claridge, he had such a bad luck on his around the world trip, so all the best for him.
Well, that was Topi Korteniemi coming home with your GTO win. The first race here for the Camel GT Series, and looks like that will officially do it today. Thanks to the team, Ozzy, Joe, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media website and merchandise store. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. The next race for the Camel Series is Aragon, Saturday, June 24th, a week from today, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern. And the Lotus 79s are up tomorrow, so make sure to turn them on as well in the morning. Be sure to check out all of the other broadcasts. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.